Today we'll be talking about the Second Balkan War, or the Balkan Wars, or the Balkan Campaign. But before we do that, welcome to my channel, War Chronicle. The Second Balkan War, also known as the Balkan Campaign, was a conflict fought between Bulgaria on one side and Greece, Serbia, Montenegro, and Turkey, who were on the other. The war started on June 29, 1913, and ended on August 10, 1913. It all started after the First Balkan War, when the Balkan League defeated the Ottoman Empire and took control of most of the region. Bulgaria was very happy with its territorial gains, but Greece wasn't. The main reason for this was because Bulgaria had seized large areas of Greek Macedonia, including the city of Thessaloniki. Tensions rose quickly, and soon the two sides were at war. In the end, the Allies defeated Bulgaria decisively and forced them to give back everything they had gained in the previous war and more. The total number of military personnel involved in the conflict is estimated to have been around 600,000 soldiers. That is quite impressive considering how small the region was. The casualties are even more mind-boggling. More than 140,000 people lost their lives during the fighting, which means that the death toll was almost equal to the number of participants. These numbers are truly a testament to the ferocity of the fighting and the hatred that existed between the different factions. As we already mentioned, the war was fought over control of the Balkans. At the beginning of the 20th century, the region was ruled by three empires: the Ottoman, Russian, and Austro-Hungarian. However, all three were on the decline and would soon be defeated by the Central Powers. After the Ottomans were defeated in the First Balkan War, the Russians decided to back away from the conflict. They realized that it was pointless to try to defeat the combined forces of the Balkans, and that it would be better to let them fight each other instead. In fact, they would benefit greatly from such an outcome. The Entente powers were on the opposite side of the fence. They saw the potential of the region and didn't want it to fall into the hands of the Central Powers. That's why they supported the Balkan League during the war. In the end, the Russians achieved exactly what they wanted: to see the Entente powers weakened while they themselves grew stronger. The Second Balkan War was caused by many factors. The first was the desire of the Bulgarians to unite all the Slavic peoples under one flag. This idea was very appealing to the Russians, since it would create a buffer zone between them and the Central Powers. The second reason was the Greek fear of encirclement. As we already mentioned, they didn't want to be surrounded by hostile powers, and therefore sought to expand their territory. The third factor was the desire of the Turks to reclaim their former glory. They felt humiliated by their defeat in the First Balkan War and wanted revenge. Finally, there was the support of the Entente and Triple Alliance, which made the conflict even more complicated. The Bulgarian army was around 200,000 strong at the start of the war, while the Greeks, Serbs, and Montenegrins had a total of 400,000 soldiers. Even though the Bulgarians were outnumbered, they had a more experienced and battle-hardened army. The Greek army was made up of poorly trained volunteers, and only 80,000 of them were actually soldiers. The Serbians had around 150,000 men, with only 60,000 being soldiers. The rest were volunteers like the Greeks. Montenegro fielded 30,000 troops, all of whom were volunteers. The Turkish army was around 120,000 strong. As we can see, the Bulgarians had a slight advantage in terms of numbers, but this wouldn't last long. The Allies managed to raise additional forces, while the Bulgarians couldn't due to lack of resources. Another advantage of the Bulgarians was their artillery, which was much better than that of their opponents. However, the Allies had more heavy guns, which proved to be decisive in several battles. In terms of strategy, the Bulgarians had the advantage since they were the ones who attacked. But overall, the Allies were more prepared for the war. They had a plan, and the Bulgarians didn't. Now let's talk about the war itself. It all began on June, when the Bulgarians invaded Greek Macedonia. Their goal was to capture Thessaloniki and force the Greeks to sue for peace. However, they were met with fierce resistance and were soon pushed back. At the same time, the Serbian and Montenegrin armies invaded Turkish Macedonia. The goal here was to capture Constantinople and end the war quickly. But again, they were met with fierce resistance and were forced to retreat. Meanwhile, the Turks managed to regroup and counterattacked. They pushed the Serbs and Montenegrins back and captured Belgrade. This victory gave the Turks the upper hand in the war, but they failed to capitalize on it. Instead of pursuing the retreating enemy, they decided to dig in and wait for the Bulgarians to make a move, and they didn't have to wait long. On July, the Bulgarians launched a surprise attack on the Turkish positions and managed to push them back. This victory gave the Bulgarians the upper hand, and they used it to capture Adrianople on August 20. With the fall of Adrianople, the Turks realized that they were in trouble. They tried to negotiate a peace treaty with the Bulgarians, but they refused to listen. The Bulgarians wanted to finish the war quickly and capture Constantinople. On August, the Bulgarians launched their final attack, but they were defeated. The next day, the Allies regrouped and launched a counterattack. The Bulgarians were completely caught off guard and were forced to retreat. The Allies pursued them and captured many towns and villages. By September, the Bulgarians were in full retreat. The Allies followed them closely and soon captured Sofia. With the capture of the Bulgarian capital, the war was effectively over. The Bulgarians were demoralized and exhausted and couldn't continue fighting. On October, they signed a peace treaty with the Allies and agreed to give back everything they had conquered in the First Balkan War. In addition to that, they had to give up even more territory. The war was over, and the Allies emerged victorious. They had managed to defeat the Bulgarians and force them to give up everything they had gained in the First Balkan War and more. The Greeks got most of Macedonia, while the Serbs got Kosovo and Metohija. The Montenegrins got a small piece of land near the coast, and the Turks got nothing. The Second Balkan War was an important event in the history of the region. It led to the decline of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of new states in the Balkans. The war also showed the importance of strategy and planning. The Bulgarians had the advantage in experience and numbers, but they lacked a good strategy. The Allies, on the other hand, were outmaneuvered and outnumbered, but their strategy was better, and they won the war. And that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed learning about the Second Balkan War as much as we did. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching.